to announce the energy regulator's decision on Eskom's selective opener on the open cycle gas turbines and the short-term power purchase program. Let me first introduce the panel. On my right is Mr. Jacob Nobise, the chairperson of NERSA, and it's Mr. Tembani Pugula, the regulator member responsible for electricity and also the chair of the electricity subcommittee. Without wasting time, I'll hand over to the chairperson of NERSA to make the announcement. Over to you.
These distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Our mandate as the energy regulator of South Africa is to regulate three industries, namely electricity, pipe gas, and petroleum pipelines. Our challenge has been and still remains the regulating of the energy industry in a manner that balances the interest of energy producers on the one hand and consumers on the other. This is never an easy task, for inevitably it is influenced by the greater economic environment, both locally and internationally, and as directed by the policy environment of government. The legal basis for the decisions of the energy regulator to approve electricity prices is derived from the Energy Regulations Act 2006, Act number 4 of 2006, we will refer to it as the Act, and the Energy Regulator Act 2004, Act number 40 of 2004. The procedures to be followed in deciding the price of electricity is derived from the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act 2000, Act number 3 of 2000, also referred to as PAJA. Before I make an announcement on the energy regulator's decision, I would like to take this opportunity to give a brief background on the application and the process leading up to the decision. On the 30th of April 2015, the energy regulator received Eskom's application for the selective reopener of the third multi-year price determination, also referred to as MYPD3 application for open cycle gas turbines, again referred to as OCGTs, and the short-term power producer program, also referred to as STTP, and the impact of the increase in the environmental levy. Eskom application requested a cost recovery of 32.9 billion for open cycle gas turbines and 19.9 billion for the short-term power purchase program for the 2015-2016 to 2017-2018 period. According to Eskom's application, the selective reopener would have resulted in a total price increase of 25.3% for 2015-16. This would consist of the 12.69% already approved by the energy regulator, the 10.1% selective reopener for the OCGTs, and the 2.5% change resulting out of the environmental levy of 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Eskom's reason for the selective reopener were as follows. The original MYPD assumption on the commissioning dates of Medupi, Kusile, and Ingula, and their expected performance have changed. Secondly, the change resulted in extensive running of open-cycle gas turbines and the continuation of short-term power purchase program agreements. According to the application, other factors that necessitated the extensive use of the open-cycle gas turbines were the deterioration of the generation plant performance, unexpected significant events such as the boiler explosion at one of the Duva units, the collapse of the Majuba power station silo, challenges with the coal quality, and delays in the commissioning of the new build program. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 13th May 2015, the energy regulator published Eskom's MYPD3 selective reopener application on the NERSA website and published in newspapers requesting stakeholders to submit written comments. The closing date for written comments was 15 June 2015. A total of 225 written stakeholder comments were received. These were made up of comments from private individuals, small users, intensive users, civil society organizations, political organizations, trade unions, environmental activists, and other stakeholders. The written stakeholder comments received were on the following issues: the legal basis for the selective reopener, the economic impact of the protracted load shedding and requested price increase, the lack of adequate information to assess the application, the timing of the implementation of the selective reopener decision, Eskom plant availability and performance, delays in commissioning of the new build stations, and non-consideration of cost savings due to delays in bringing new plant online. The energy regulator conducted a 2-day public hearing on the 23rd and 24th of June 2015. During the public hearings, more than 30 presentations were made by small users, intensive users, civil society organizations, political organizations, trade unions, environmental activists, and private individuals. At the public hearings, some of the key issues raised can be summarized as follows. High prices of electricity will result in company closures, job losses, loss of essential skills and capacity in the economy. An increased use of open-cycle gas turbine due to inter alia, the delay in the constructions of new generation capacity cannot be assessed in isolation of an assessment of the associated savings in other parts of Eskom due to plant performance. Funding for existing short-term power purchase programs should be approved for a 3-year period commencing on 2015-2016 and new contracts on a year-on-year basis commencing 2015-2016. NERSA should seriously consider awarding only a small portion of the open-cycle gas turbine funding request, forcing Eskom to make use of demand market participation system already in place. Experience indicated that Eskom does not make sufficient use of demand-side market participation during winter high season period. Crucial information is missing in the application for the public to be able to consider and evaluate the application of Eskom for the purpose of submitting proper and complete comments to NERSA. Eskom application does not comply with the requirements of the Municipal Finance Management Act and Municipal Systems Act, in that less than 30 days was given to National Treasury and SALGA for comments. Eskom has been granted tariff increases in excess of inflation since 2008. The country therefore needs an electricity price pass that will ensure that Eskom and the industry remain financially viable and sustainable, but remains affordable. The short-term power purchase program procurement process is not open, fair, transparent, and cost-effective. Eskom application is silent on the price paid per kilowatt hour for each of the short-term power purchase program contracts. The environmental cost of Eskom generation far exceeds the environmental levy. The environmental levy should be a financial incentive for change within Eskom's generation mix. Eskom should be presenting a plan on how it will seek to reduce its exposure to the environmental levy and future carbon tax as part of a responsible and sustainable planning. As indicated earlier, one of the important mandates of the energy regulator is to regulate the electricity industry. This includes Eskom, municipal distributors, and other licensees in terms of the Electricity Regulation Act. In terms of approving standard average prices for Eskom, the energy regulator uses the multi-year price determination mechanism. The outcome of the energy regulator analysis demonstrates the following. Some of the commissioning dates provided in the MYPD3 application have lapsed. No information has been provided by Eskom regarding the new commissioning dates in the application. As a result, the energy regulator is unable to assess the required usage and financial impact of the open cycle gas turbines. The impact of the above mentioned changes cannot be considered in isolation of other factors, such as savings associated with the operations and or the delay of the commissioning of Medupi, Kusile, and Ungula. Savings associated with the low load factor of the existing generating plant, the impact of the change in the maintenance regime, and the resultant poor plant performance, the effectiveness of the plant maintenance with respect to plant availability, the impact of the 23 billion equity injection and 60 billion loan conversion to equity by the state, the change in the demand for electricity, the availability and costs of alternatives to the use of open cycle gas turbines. For example, demand side management, power buybacks, demand market participation, changes in other MYPD3 assumptions, the economic impact of the proposed price increase, and other sources of funding. Based on the available information and analysis performed, the energy regulator has decided as follows: not to approve Eskom's application for the selective reopener of the MYPD3 application for open cycle gas turbines and short-term power purchase programs, and the impact of the increase in the environmental levy received on the 30th of April 2015, and that Eskom should submit A, an application for the adjustment in the allowed revenue in accordance with the MIPD methodology. Alternatively, a new application for the period 1 April 2016 to 31 March 2019 with indicative projections for the period 1 April 2019 to 31 March 2021. The energy regulator did not consider the proposed increase to the environmental levy as it was not gazetted, and Eskom withdrew the application of the environmental levy during the public hearings. Other factors considered in the decisions were the following. The MYPD methodology does not provide for the selective reopener, but allows for the regulatory clearing account to be used. The energy regulator is enjoined, when making a decision, to be consistent with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, and all applicable laws. The application did not provide the mechanism on how the proposed increase, if granted, can be implemented in the current financial year in a manner that is consistent with the requirements of the Municipal Finance Management Act 2003, Act number 56 of 2003, also referred to as the MFMA. Furthermore, any mid-year or additional price increases to the bulk price increase for the 2015-16 financial year cannot be considered as Section 28.6 of the MFMA, Municipal Finance Management Act, prescribes that a municipal tax or tariffs may not be increased during a financial year, i.e. after 1 July 2015. The application does not align with the credible long-term planning and certainty that MIPD seeks to achieve. Indeed, it works against such. Based on the urgency of the application, the consultation process was in line with PAJA. We would therefore like to thank all stakeholders for their participation in the energy regulator's decision-making process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nabuse, the chairperson of NERSA, for the announcement. Members of the media, it's your time to ask questions, if ever there are any, and also clarifications. I'll first take 3 questions and we'll request the panel to respond, and then we'll take another round of questions. I see Antoinette A, and you say, can I have the third one? And you say, in that order. Is that Antoinette?
Just 2 questions. When NERSA received this application, and clearly you would have seen the deficiencies as all the other stakeholders see. Did you engage Eskom in an effort to get more information, to get proper basis for the application, or how did you do that between you and Eskom? And then the other question is, was there any indication to NERSA that should it proceed to approve some increase on the basis of this application, that there would have been or could have been a legal challenge?
Okay.
Jan de Lange from Media 24. Can you tell us what you think that NERSA's view was on some of the objections that Eskom hasn't disclosed its savings? Would it have to disclose these savings in full in a future application? Can you secondly tell us what your view is on Eskom's pronouncements that the refusal of this application will lead to more load shedding. And in that sense, can you give us an idea of what you thought of Bloomsdale's presentation, who said increase load shedding, but plan it better, and keep the tariffs where it is?
Yeah, it's Sichalavanko from Business Report. I think Ian has kind of like asked one of the questions that I can ask, but the second one is, Mr. Mulifi made it clear actually in his presentation to NERSA that it's either the increase or the economic nightmare. So where does that leave us from your perspective? Where does it leave us?
Should we take the... Oh.
I think let's take Chris and then we'll respond.
If I may follow up on the question just made. What do you make of Eskom's threat that failure granted a 12.61% increase will result in dramatically increased levels of load shedding in South Africa?
All right, I think we'll take those questions. I will ask Mr. Bukula to assist in answering some of the points that were raised. And perhaps, let me perhaps just start off by saying this, that as NERSA we make technical decisions when we make decisions on tariff increases. That means that we follow our published methodologies, and all the decisions are made in line with those methodologies. And that would include the provision of information, interactions that we may or may not have with the licensees, and matters of that nature. But as it relates to the specific issue of whether we consulted Eskom on some information that's provided, I'll let Mr. Bukula answer that.
Okay. Thank you. When we received the application from Eskom, we looked at what the application was saying, and we did request that the application should provide information that would be in line with what is required in our MYPD methodology and in line with what is required by our Electricity Regulation Act, where we would be able to assess that the licensee, in whatever costs that it incurs, provided they're efficient, they get a return that is reasonable and recover all of those costs. But I think the application was clear from Eskom that it is only dealing with the selective reopener, and I think even during the public hearings you may have had Eskom indicating that they still intend to submit an application that would have all of the elements that we wanted to look at, or we should look at when we assess an application.
Okay. And perhaps on the second issue of whether we were concerned about legal challenges, as I said with my opening remarks, we conduct activities in accordance with our rules, our published methodologies, and within all the applicable legislations, whether it's PAJA, which is a promotion of access to information, and or the Energy Regulator Act. And so we are satisfied that as long as we follow those legislation and rules, that we shouldn't be challenged. Clearly, there will always be either licensees or individuals that may be unhappy with our decisions. However, as I said, we only make technical decisions in accordance with the laws. So we did not specifically consider whether we could be challenged legally or otherwise, because we just followed the rules. Now, the question relating to the savings, Mr. Bukula.
I think at this stage we cannot say that Eskom objected to giving us the savings. I think they, at the time when they made the application, they did not show us the calculations of what savings they would have made from the non-operation or the delays in Medupi and other savings that would accrue from the availability of plant that's less than the 82% that the application was set at. And I think those are the items that we're requiring. For us to be able to make a proper assessment of the application, we need to have an understanding of what is being saved by plant being unavailable. And as far as the coal, we accept that there would be costs that are embedded that can be changed, like your manpower costs. Maybe those won't change, but there are other costs that are variable that would change when you are not operating the plant. The same with Medupi. In the MYPD3, we had assumed that it would be in operation by as early as December 2013, and when that did not happen, the assumptions that we had made around the coal they would use and everything else that's associated with operating the power station, that was not provided, and that is one of the things that we're saying we're requiring. And it is not so much that they didn't disclose, but I think the application just focused on what they required. And in the application and in the decision that we're making when we're saying that they must apply in accordance with the MYPD methodology, that is exactly that information that would be required to disclose what has been saved, what has been unsaved.
Okay, as it relates to load shedding, and I think Eskom contention that if you do not grant an increase, it will result in load shedding. I think it's important to note that nobody wants load shedding. The stability of the electricity system is important for the country, and it's something that we as a regulator needs to ensure that happens. And what is also important, though, is we also want licenses that are viable. We want an Eskom that is viable so that it can provide sufficient electricity to the country. But at the same time, we want tariffs that are affordable and more predictable and certain. Now, in applying ourselves, in using the methodology, we're quite satisfied, though, that in our engagement with the licensee, the need for load shedding should, over time, be done away with. So we shouldn't be having any load shedding for reasons that we've indicated, whether it's maintenance and things of that nature. But what I'm going to do, let Mr. Bukula expand on this one.
Let me start by the question around that if this increase is not granted, there would be load shedding. From Eskom's presentation, if you remember their very first slide, it was the second last bullet that said that they want this increase in advance, but if they can't get it in advance, they can get it via the RCA. So from where we sit, we didn't get the impression that it's either this increase or load shedding. It may have been created during the process that would be the case. But one of the reasons why we have not been able to say that it's load shedding or not, we have not been able to assess whether, if I may start with Eskom's performance of its generation plant, whether it's supposed to be performing at that level, whether the amount of maintenance that's being conducted, there's sufficient resources to deal with that, and whether it should be conducted in that way. And if you would reduce the amount of maintenance that you are performing on the plant, I'm not saying postpone forever, but reduce, we can argue that then we would not have load shedding. So that's the first one. The second one is there are other options of demand side management and demand market participation. From the application, we could not really assess whether those would reduce the impact of load shedding. So load shedding is not an isolated incident that we should look at. We should look at the total system, that if we have a properly planned generation maintenance schedule that ensures that only the plant that would not result in load shedding is taken out and maintained, then we wouldn't talk about load shedding. But we also have to look at, if we look at the other demand side market or demand side management levers that can be employed, if they have been employed to the fullest, And thirdly, there are other sources of funding that we also need to look at before we jump and say that it's only load shedding. From the application that we have and from what we understand, we're not at that stage where we're saying there's a choice between load shedding and increased prices.
Now, on the question of where does this leave Eskom, let's just be clear that the regulator has not closed the door to Eskom. And just to be clear, in the decision that we have taken, and I'd like to repeat it again, what we've said is we've let the door open for Eskom to submit an application in accordance with the MIPD methodology. So Eskom is still free to come and submit an application that provides all the information that will allow us to make a decision. But what we've also said as an alternative, and given that Eskom has indicated that a lot of the assumptions that went into the MYPD 3 applications had changed significantly, such as Midupi and Kusile being delayed, and that in fact, as an alternative, they can come and do a completely new application. So Eskom can come and make a completely new application. Could call it MYPD4, whatever we'd like to call it, where they give all the details and projections all the way up to 2021, given the new circumstances. So the door is not closed for Eskom. So they've got those two options to come back to us as a regulator. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's fine.
All right, so that's the first series of questions.
Can I take another round of questions? Karen? Yeah. Start with you.
Paul Bricker from Bloomberg News. Could you just maybe give a timeline of how quickly Eskom could submit another application and how soon that could be processed?
Okay.
From the door being left open, is it an either-or situation that Eskom comes with the MIPD4 type application and therefore does not make RCA type backward application, or is it a situation where they could do both? In the interest of predictability and certainty, is it best to have an all-encompassing type approach, or is it best that they go through the RCA type approach?
Okay.
I'm Kurashni Governor from Reuters. It's pretty much a follow-up to two other questions. Can you give us some indication of time frame in terms of implementation if another process is launched?
Okay.
I'll just add to those. Tina Junot Peterson has tabled a bill in Parliament that allows Eskom or licensees to appeal their decisions. What do you make of that? Does that perhaps threaten your ability to regulate the industry?
Okay, should we take those? Mr. Bukula, do you want to handle the timelines issue?
Okay. I would not want to speak for Eskom as far as how quickly they can submit the application, but it may well be that they can do it within a month, depending on how ready they are with the information, because what we really require this time is information that is as close as they can make it to the reality, so that we don't have and providing stakeholders with an opportunity to present their facts and evidence. We have a previous ruling that says that the minimum that we require is 6 months before the date of the effectiveness of those tariffs. So if you want to have an increase, you must apply 6 months before that, so that we can undertake all of the processes that we require. So we would have to wait for that. Now the one around the RCA or a new application, one of the reasons why we had the multi-year price determination was to have certainty and a price path that would make investors have an understanding of what they have to do. The RCA was a method that we wanted to use to just correct in cases where things really go wrong. So the preferred method would be that Eskom must submit an RCA application so as to correct and we stay within this MYPD. But if their feeling is that the assumptions and situations have changed so much that there is no relevance between what is happening now and what they had projected in the MYPD, so we must then have a new application and work on new realities or new projections. And that for us is how we see it. Otherwise, if we have a multi-year price determination that changes every year, there's no point in having it. You have one and you want them to stick to it by limiting the abilities of the entity or of the licensee to get out of what they had committed, so as to encourage them to put in figures that have some alignment with reality in a manner that would not make you change the determination.
Okay. As it relates to amendments to the National Energy Regulator Act that's going through Parliament, I think as a regulator we will engage with the amendments as in accordance with the timelines that are set out in the parliamentary process. Suffices to say that at this point in time we actually do not object to decisions being reviewed. However, as we engage with the legislation, those positions can be clarified. I think we're quite satisfied that we're taking technical decisions that are of such a nature that they can withstand scrutiny. Okay.
Another round. Any hands from this side?
There's no hands. No hands.
Anthony?
Over the years, NERSA has often given Eskom quite a bit less than what they asked for, and always you've given good reasons. But the impression that I get, and I think many other people as well, is that Eskom does not change its behavior. NERSA has been criticizing its maintenance regime, for example, for a long time, but it seems Eskom doesn't improve its efficiency. Where does that leave us, and is there anything more that the regulator can do?
Yeah, I think it's an important observation, but let me let Mr. Bukula address it.
The Electricity Regulation Act, the section that deals with tariff principles, is two important principles. The first one is this one, that you enable an efficient licensee to recover the full cost. So there's a part where the regulator has to exercise its discretion around whether you're efficient or not before it makes you recover those costs and even give you a money. The second part of that is the one that says that you need to provide incentives and penalties, of course, that would drive the behavior that you require, and those are the avenues that we are going to have to look at to ensure that the behavior that the Section 8 of the Act also allows us to set performance targets and others, and those were set. So when you don't meet those performance targets, we then have to use the other levers that are there to ensure that there's alignment between what has been approved and set for you and your performance, and incentives as well.
So now just follow up, have you used that so far, or you not used the penalties and incentives apart from the tariff signals?
There are other incentives that we use for Eskom, for instance, in their transmission division, the system minutes that they lose and the number of faults that there is one of the incentives that we have. And yes, in generation we are working towards having those incentives that we are going to use in that. But also the process of implementing whatever corrective action that's required is not a straightforward process that you can say today that they must do this. 19 of our Electricity Regulation Act has a process where we must first sit as a tribunal, then give them an opportunity to correct, and if they don't correct, we can only then fine them 2 million rand, maximum 2 million rand a day for the days that they don't correct that. So it's a process that we are undertaking, and we have given indications of the sort of behavior and the performance that we're expecting, and we are now undertaking that process.
So that's a new phase, sort of, in
Yes.
this relationship with this.
Yes.
Can we take the last round of questions if ever there are any?
There isn't any.
Yeah, it seems like there are no further questions. I think, Terence?
This could be the most unpopular question. In the interest of certainty and predictability, do you have any regrets with the regulator looking back when it came to 16% application, with assumptions that justify 16%, that you decided to deliver half?
Terence, maybe we should go back and say that when we had the Eskom applying for a 25% increase, we do have regrets when Eskom came and reduced it to 16%, because it then changed a lot of things. The other regrets that we have is if we could have had a way of knowing that Medupi was not going to come in on the day that Eskom said it would come in, and that their plant was not going to perform at the levels that they said it would perform at. Those are the regrets that we have in the decision. Had it performed there, and had Medupi been commissioned on the dates that they said it would be commissioned, we would be well on the path that we had set for the price increases of around 8% per annum for this country.
Thank you. I think this brings us to the end of this media briefing. Thanks again once more for coming. The media statement and the remarks by the chairperson will be distributed. Colleagues that have requested one-on-one interviews, they should just touch base with Dash to show you where the interviews will be taking place. Thank you. And
all right, there you go. We'll leave the NERSA announcement. Of course, Jacob Modise, the NERSA chair, announcing that the latest application from Eskom for a tariff hike has been dismissed. Effectively, what it means is that Eskom's request for a 12.61% price increase over and above the 12.69% increase, which of course has been granted and effective from April, has been dismissed. NERSA saying there through Jacob Modise that Eskom has another chance. The door is still open. The power utility can make another application for. They're just giving you some reasons as to why that application had been dismissed. NERSA saying that there was not enough information on the application. It contradicted or did not comply with the various acts for the municipalities, and less than 30 days were given for comments. All right, we'll have more news from 404 when we come back.